Common law comes from common sense, and common sense comes from commonality, what we all know is right or wrong. You know, we all know we've been defrauded by these banks and all that, you know, in one way or another. You know, these people are just trying it on with you.
Many of us have become aware that we are being defrauded by the banking system, and that our government, rather than protecting the people, is protecting the very institutions and persons that are leading our country towards financial ruin. Back in November, on the UK Column Live show, I interviewed Watkin Richards, who explained to me that Barclays Bank had defrauded him of nearly £180,000 by forging his signature.
On inspections on the files, it was discovered papers including an affidavit had been signed by my wife, who had not been involved in any of the dealings with the bank and certainly not signed anything. It was clear at this stage that the signatures had been forged, and I then informed the police of the fraud that had taken place. It transpired that my wife's signature had been forged by lifting her signature from the bank paying in book. This had apparently been done by the use of various chemicals.
Despite this revelation being almost too much to be true, it would appear that Watkin Richards is not the only person to be defrauded in this manner. We spoke to Guy Taylor in Hereford.
So I took a loan out from Barclays Bank, which I did take out, and my accountant organised it, and it was done through a solicitor back in then and all that, and I took a loan out for £824,000. I was paying the loan back, and I discovered that all the account numbers had changed for this loan, so I wasn't paying in the same. They'd written me a letter saying, don't use that account number now, use this account. And I was like, well, that's odd, you know, why would they change the account? And then upon investigation, I discovered that in April 2008, allegedly I'd taken out another loan for £904,000, paid off the initial £824,000. Well, I knew nothing about this. So at that time, back in them days, I went to the solicitor, got the solicitor on the case. We still weren't getting any information off Barclays, letters going backwards and forwards. They still wouldn't address what that was about. Solicitor agreed with me, it should need checking out, because all the charges were relating to the first loan, which I did take out, but apparently that had been paid off by the second loan, and of course, you know, I hadn't agreed, and there was no deed of variation of any description. So what I did then was, Barclays wouldn't address it, so I sent Barclays quite serious letters to the manager, the actual guy who I'd met, I'd done the original deal with, went to him personally at the bank, saying, can you explain what this second loan's all about? He wouldn't respond. And 12 months later, I'm still paying this money, and every time I was paying it in, I was paying it into the account with a paying in slip. And I was paying it in as under protest and duress. I was putting that on it because I just basically, so they were aware that I wasn't happy about the situation. And this went, as I said, this went on for 12 months. Then, next thing is I got a letter from the bank saying that I hadn't made a payment on this account since 2008. Of course, I had all these receipts. I'd been paying the money regularly. In fact, I'd been paying more than I was supposed to. And so that was clearly a nonsense. So I wrote to the bank, and I'd just given them another cheque for that month's payment. And I said, right, from now on, I'm not giving you any more money until this matter's resolved. If you haven't been getting all the money I've been giving you for the last 3 years, then you know, I'm not going to give you any more. So in 2011, I got a letter from a court, and it was a court from a clearinghouse somewhere up north. I'm not sure if it was Salford or somewhere. You know, one of these rubber stamping court, they're not really courts, they're warehouses, rubber stamping against people. And said that I owed Barclays £904,000, but for an unsecured loan. Well, ridiculous. What's going on? So I addressed that with a statutory declaration, saying, look, this is obviously this loan that I know nothing about. You know, it's not my signature. I didn't do anything to do with this loan. So go away.
It seemed that the behaviour that Guy was experiencing from Barclays was very similar to the experience Watkin Richards had had. The most disturbing aspect of Watkin Richards' case was that Barclays had appeared to have forged his signature in order to take out the loan. I asked Guy if he had seen the loan agreement and whether his signature was on the document.
It looks very similar to mine, but it's not mine. It's a Photoshop or something. It's not actually an ink signature. And the writing around it is actually, the dates and that are clearly not my writing. You know, clearly not my writing. Next thing is I got a court order saying that they believe there was no merit in my defence, but the signature was obviously an issue that had to be resolved. And of course, the reason they say that there was no merit in my defence, you immediately think, what do you mean? You know, it's because these courts, these civil courts, once you mention the law or crime, they can't see or hear it, and so they couldn't see or hear what was going on with me on that realm. So that was it, and I never heard no more about the £904,000. So then, come April, landlady at one of our family's pubs, she's been there 20 odd years, 20 years. She received a letter from some receiver, a private receiver, saying that, dear occupier, not even writing to her personally, she didn't take the time and trouble to find out who the lady is, she's been there 20 years, don't pay any more money to Guy Taylor, pay the rent to us. And I said to the estate agents, you know, if you get involved in this is a fraud, and if you get involved in it, you're engaging in the fraud and you'll be complicit in the fraud. So the local estate agents went away, Sidney Phillips. Then another set of estate agents came back a couple months later, Flint and Cook, I believe that was, and I did the same thing to them. And I kept all my paperwork and kept it all tidy, and just every time I get moved against, I give them all the paperwork. So that was it then for a while, and then luck as have it, I saw a Ben Gilroy video concerning you know, getting rid of receivers and stuff, and duty of care and performance of, and the tri-party agreement.
Ben Gilroy has been embarking on a mission around Ireland to educate people in regards to their rights when dealing with so-called law administrators. In one of his videos, Ben Gilroy halts receivers, business owners know your rights. He explains the relationship between the business owner and the receiver. In this particular clip, he explains how he helped a man by the name of Jerry Burns to protect his business from a receiver whose services had been enlisted by a bank, apparently without following the proper procedures.
So I said to Jerry, was he aware that the that the receiver works as an agent for Jerry? This was an absolute surprise for Jerry. He thought the receiver worked for the bank. I said, look, Jerry, the best thing we can do is send him a set of questions to see is he performing on his duty of care to you. There's only about 20 questions on it, and it's really questions that he should have been able to answer if he performed on a duty of care to the business owner. He refused to answer any of the questions. Now, they were very simple questions. I mean, the first question I do remember was, do you have a duty of care to me? I mean, even to not answer that proves he wasn't acting on it. But there was other questions which would be much more serious, in the sense that, did you see a signed contract between the bank and Jerry Burns? Because it's only on the signed contract where the receiver can move in. I mean, that's what's known as the tri-party agreement. Well, if the mortgage deed has been sold or securitised on, as is the nature of banks doing this for the last 10 to 15 years, then they've lost the power to appoint a receiver. You know, a lot of these receivers are very arrogant and think that the law is on their side. And in a lot of cases, you know, the courts are on their side. Doesn't mean the law is, though.
The universe gave me that as a gift, because the next thing is some lads down an industrial estate that my family owned told me that there were people down there changing locks. So I shot down to this down to the trading estate, and the guys there was a local locksmith and this guy in a suit and tie. So I said, get off my land, mate. So I said, get off my land now. And he said, oh, I'm off your land. So I said, well, we've ascertained whose land it is, haven't we? So I said, right, who are you? He said, a receiver. I said, well, this is a fraud. I don't owe this money that you're coming around here claiming for. And he said, I said, have you got duty of care? And he said, yeah. I said, we're not performing on it, you're sacked. And sacked him from the place. So I then contacted his company, and I rang him and said, look, what's going on? You know, well, why are you trying to get my properties? Well, what had happened is the £904,000 loan, because they couldn't get me on that because it was nothing to do with me. They'd gone back to the original document, which they even claim is paid in full themselves, and tried to gain traction on me through the original document. The clear case of behaving fraudulently, because there's no other way to look at it. They've tried to go one way and then they've tried to go another, and so it's a clear case of fraud. They can't say that this thing was paid and then that it's not paid. And the next thing is some auction house put boards up on 3 of these properties, saying that my property is going to be auctioned in this auction in London with a date. So of course we did the same thing with the auctioneers and told the auctioneers, oh, look, this is a fraud and you're engaging in a fraud. And I've reported this stuff to the police, and the police say, oh, it's a civil thing. They don't seem to understand the concept of fraud. But with Barclays, for instance, if a bank manager gets £1 million worth of credit, then I've been told, whether it's right or not, I don't know, that he gets up to 2% on that. So that'd be 20 grand for every £1 million. Well, again, I don't know that this is the case in this matter. I don't know, because they haven't communicated with me. But the bank manager who initially took out the loan with me, who I agreed the £824,000 with, based on that, would have earned 16 grand. Now, if another loan got taken out, which I knew nothing about, paid off the first, and I hadn't been aware, he would have made 18 grand on that, and I'd be paid. I wouldn't even be aware of it. So maybe this is what's going on. We don't, we were yet to uncover it really. So I took an injunction out against Barclays and the auctioneers, and I contacted our local papers, who wrote down that that I was going to arrest people in the auction and all the rest of it. And then the day before the auction, which they had no paperwork for, because we've got all our documentation, we've got every bit of documentation, we've got all our deeds and everything, all the provenance of all our properties. And the day before the auction, they withdrew. So. Okay, that may sound great, but at the end of the day, the tide's come far enough now, and so now I'm pushing back. So now I went to the police station and said I want to report the fraud. The police have said basically, we don't really deal with fraud anymore, and give me a piece of paper saying action fraud on it, which is some number. And in all fairness, I contacted the number, and in full fairness, I've got a meeting with the police next week concerning all this, and they've actually done something about it. I contacted the SFO, but of course the Serious Fraud Office will only deal with frauds over £1 million. So, it's that's the nonsense of that. So it's obviously the Serious Fraud Office is for other people, not us. So no matter how serious the fraud is, the amount obviously counts, not anything else. So that's the position with that now. So I'm continuing my criminal actions against Barclays.
Guy is certainly not shy when it comes to taking action against fraudsters and corruption. He has been in and out of court over the years, fighting what he sees as a corrupt system. Guy explained to me the process he had undertaken against Barclays.
The whole point is when someone's engaging in a fraud against you, the statute of limitations on time so whenever I charge anybody with anything, I try to charge them a common law charge, which is the fundamental charge of it. So which is what I've done, and which is what I'm investigating on that. They've not actually gone to court and got anything against me for this. Because they couldn't get the £904,000 loan, they went back to the original 824 and tried under the 1925 Act to enforce them charges against me, which have been paid. Because Barclays hadn't been engaging me in this serious matter, and obviously causing me to suffer a serious tort, i.e. the worry, and I sent documentation to them, and I had it registered and recorded, and they signed for it at the other end. So I engaged them in bills of exchange, bills of obligation, saying, look, answer this, or else I'm considering that you're engaged in crimes. So I had my paper trail for that, so my foundation documents, and because they didn't address it, then they create a estoppel by that, because they had the opportunity to rebut it and they didn't. So I issued the bank manager himself a lien for £10 million and Barclays for £100 million. Again, these things, an apology would rip them up. That wasn't the purpose behind it. It's just I just want I don't want these people. These people are very arrogant. Why wouldn't they just come and sit and talk to me and explain this situation, and we'd come to some remedy? But of course, they wouldn't. So I got involved in the lien process, and of course, the lien process requires just certain stages. Really, you've addressed it with someone, they've refused, and you can prove that they've had acknowledgement of what you've sent them, and then you give them an opportunity to cure that, and they still don't do it. So then the lien, you give them the lien document, and that is the final bill of obligation, which it's got a notary seal on it. So it's an international document, which is what you have to call it now if you want to go to a notary. You don't go there and say you want to do a lien, because they've been told not to do these things anymore. I wonder why. Because they only do international documents. Well, of course, liens are international documents, and so they've now got that. So my idea was if they want to play hardball, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who's got a debt with Barclays, firstly around here in Hereford, in this time of austerity, I'm prepared to deduct it off the lien as a gift, just basically, and we'll do that to Barclays if that's what they want, and at the end of the day, I know it's a legitimate document, and of course it can't do anything but help other people, can it? Because I don't actually want anything from it. All I wanted was a remedy of it. If they can do it to us, we can do it to them. We've got exactly the same paperwork. It follows exactly the same format. So it is no different. Absolutely no different. Everybody's got the power to do that.
Since our interview, Guy has been in contact with the Serious Fraud Squad and the Banking Ombudsman. The police have informed him that they are currently questioning Barclays regarding the alleged fraud. A fraud hotline has now been opened up by the Land Registry for homeowners who fear their property might be subject to a fraudulent sale or mortgage, suggesting that this sort of behaviour is happening on a large scale. If anybody thinks they may have information that would help our continuing investigations into the fraudulent behaviour of the banking system, then they can contact us at the UK Column office or email me at malcolm@ukcolumn.org.